Welcome to the Rogue Arena podcast. I'm your host, Lulu Cohen, with special guest Jorel Decker from the multi-platinum group Hollywood Undead and the co-founder of Ramshead Cannabis. Today's topic, mastering the art of the grow. Welcome to the show. Let's get into the weeds.
What's up? I'm Jorel Decker from Ramshead Cannabis and the band Hollywood Undead with Rogue Arena, shaping the cannabis world of tomorrow. Cannabis is an ongoing thing. I built that facility. I was like, wow, I get to build a facility from scratch, with money. I found an investor that I met on the road when I was touring, and I was like, this is cool. But then that was also like 3 years ago. Now I've learned so much since then. I'm like, man, I designed this place totally wrong. So we're constantly going back and retrofitting it. I mean, we're producing like high quality stuff, but the summer hit and our AC, it was a very hot summer this year, I think all over the world. Every grower's having trouble. Like our weed just came out, like, in my opinion, garbage because, the rooms are overheating. The ACs were shutting down. It was like 108 degrees every day. The ACs can't handle that heat outside. So it's just, it's cool. Like I'm proud of myself for getting this far and starting with nothing. I sold my car to buy my first tent. I had no transportation to start growing. I'm like, man, I can't believe I made it this far, but I'm still like fighting hurdles like every single day.
Every single day, yeah. And so, just, for the newcomer who's growing maybe 6 to 10 plants, what's a common sense approach to grow?
The best way to do it is, because I have friends that are doing it, I just give them advice. And the best thing to do is control your environment. Get a small tent. There's used tents everywhere. Just make sure you bleach the crap out of them, like water and bleach. Build them, spray them down, clean them, let them dry, spray them down, clean them like 3 times because those things are nasty. And I've sold tents and I don't bother cleaning them when I sell them. It's just not worth the money you're getting for it. So you can buy a used tent, for like $20-$50 when brand new they're $200-$300. So start with a tent. Your environment's everything. Like put it in your house. And generally you want it to be like warm and wet. So people like try to grow weed in like cold, dry places. The warmer the air is, the more moisture it can retain. So if, someone's like, oh, I like to keep my house at, 73 degrees, that's too cold for cannabis. So at least when you're starting, maybe when you're finishing your plant or ripening it. So get a tent, put a little heater in there, just put it on low. You got to make sure it's safe. I go get, I'm going to start from the ground up. So you get a little like flat, like cinder block, like mason thing at Home Depot for like $1. Put your heater on top of that. You don't want it sitting on your tent because you don't want to start a fire. You don't want to run extension cords. Heaters on extension cords start fires. Put it in a corner of a room next to an outlet. And then whatever you can do, don't run extension cords unless you're doing like a fan or something that's like low amps. So your lights and your heater, you don't want on extension cords. And you basically want to get a humidifier, small one that you can just dump water in every day. So for the majority of the cannabis plant's life, you want it warm and wet, like literally like mid to low 80s and, like 70% humidity about, depending on what light you're using. So you just want it warm and wet. So you can look up, there's kits you can buy online. Just look up a kit that has the fan, the light. You don't have to buy it. You can buy it all used. Look up the kit, figure out everything you need. And the most important thing is the heater and humidifiers. People will just put it in there with a light and their house is too cold. I'm like, oh, my plant looks like shit. I'm like, yeah, because, these are like warm weather plants naturally where they come from.
It's funny because it's all about, space, equipment, lighting, heat, temperature. There's so many different components that I think, we could talk about forever. But as we are trying to focus in, tell us, just in terms of, cutting, when you're, your next step you might go to how do you cut?
So when you're starting, like the best thing you can do is get a heater and humidifier. And obviously you're going to have your light and your moving airflow and your fan. Everyone kind of knows that. Everyone that wants to grow cannabis knows those basics, but they overlook the heater and humidifier. As the plant gets older, around like week 4 or 5, you start making it colder and drier. And you can find charts online making it colder and drier. By the time you're done, there's so many day and night temperatures that I control or we control, but you can't do that when you're in a tent. That's fine. So just start making it colder and colder as time goes on. you find a chart online, and then when you cut it and hang it upside down, you basically want your humidity 60% and you want your temperature like 60 degrees. There's some very good things called ink bird, INK bird, and they're humidity and temperature controllers, and you just plug them in, you set your temperature, and like it's kind of hands off. So that's like for $100, I believe, or even $75, you get 2 of them. And those are like the best cheap things that like an indoor grower can buy. So I have a friend, this guy that I've toured with a lot. He's like, man, I love growing cannabis and smoking my own stuff. And he's just like, I've been walking him through it. And I told him to get heater, humidifier, and the ink birds. And he already had his own little LED light and a tent. And he like does his own nutrients or bought nutrients. I don't even know what they are, but just those environment controls. He's like, I've never had healthier plants. He's like, these look absolutely insane. Because your environment's everything. It's called your VPD, your vapor pressure deficit. And that's how your plant absorbs nutrients, how it transpires. So if your VPD is correct, your plant is healthy. I mean, like imagine trying to like weight lift outside in the sun and you're sweating out gallons of water, but only intaking like a pint of water. Like it's just not an ideal environment for your human body to do so. And plants are actually a lot more similar to humans than people would think.
What about keeping the plant whole?
You mean to hang it upside down?
Right, hang it upside down before you cut, right?
For a newcomer, I would say keep it whole because it dries slower. So the longer it takes to dry, the better the cannabis will be. Like, and you want to try to keep that environment. Otherwise, you're like killing your terps if it's like too hot or too dry. So hang it upside down, leave it whole, and it usually takes about 14 days. If you don't have a dehumidifier, it might take up to 20 days. Open your tent, crack it, wave it out. It's going to stink. You want the small stems to snap, like the little branches. You want the big ones to bend but not snap. If the big branches are snapping, you went too far. Then when you're trimming it, it'll crumble and turn into popcorn, which you don't want. You want your big bud to stay intact. So it's got to be like a little squishy. The leaves got to be dead and like crumbling off. Little branches snapping and the big branches bending. That's a perfect time to trim. And then after you like trim it down, I bucket, it's called. You take the plant, you buck each bud into a bucket and say all your buds are bucked down. You want to trim and then put in a bucket with a lid after you trim it. It's called curing at that point. Every day you want to come in, open it, shake it around, leave it open for like 3 to 5 minutes, and then put the lid back on. So what that does is that lets the moisture slowly release. It collects. When you burp it, you're releasing moisture, and it comes out. And every day you'll notice smell more.
Wait, Jorel, I can't hear you. Hold on.
Tell him to go meet this guy outside.
Okay, you're back now.
Someone was trying to call me.
Oh, okay.
So, I don't know where it cut off, but when you're doing the curing process, you're literally burping the moisture out, and every day it's going to smell more and more. Some people cure for like months at a time. It's crazy. Like we try to cure for like at least a week, but sometimes people want to buy stuff too fast. The longer you cure, the better it smells.
So many great words. I think in growing cannabis that you have to really keep in your head because they're so important. When is that? Oh, sorry. Go ahead.
That's one of the most overlooked steps is drying and curing, because I've seen people have beautiful plants. They smell good. They look good. They throw it in a dry room and they don't regulate their dry room. It's just like it's 80 degrees or 75 degrees. The humidity is like 40%. You're kind of like killing the process. It's like that's why there's like humidors with tobacco and cigars. Right. It's so important you preserve, like it's a perishable product. It's a consumable. Like if you're storing like chocolate or food, like you can't just leave it anywhere. It's going to go bad. Cannabis is no different. It's a consumable product. So it's so important you keep the right environment. And the more you do that, the better product you're going to get. So try to dry, it's 60% humidity, 60 degrees. Let it dry. If you have that, it takes like 10 to 14 days. And if you see it going below like 60%, then you got to check your branches. And then when people cure it, they don't really burp it. They put it in a bucket and just leave it there. You have to open it every day, get that moisture out, or it gets a very wet smell and it can get moldy because it's still releasing moisture. So that whole process is so important. If you skip that process, you can ruin a good harvest. Like you can do 3 months of work just to ruin it in 2 days. It's crazy.
So knowing when to start. and then when you're starting, you're taking the air out, right? And you've got aeration, humidity, darkness.
Yeah.
All part of the overall process to get to binning.
Yeah.
Right. Yep. So, no, that's great. Can we, I know there's so much to dig into. Can you talk about, ambient conditions, like, ambient air? 'Cause I know you talk about temperature and how important that is.
You want airflow in your room. There's what are these meters called? They're wind meters. I forget the name of them. It's not a hygrometer. That's humidity. They're just like little they're like andrometers or something like that. It's a little wind meter. They're like 15, $20 on Amazon, and it very sensitive. It'll move with the wind. So generally in a grow room, like what I do is like 0.5 like meters per second. It'll say like ms. 0.5 to 1. A lot of people they overdo it. They got those wall fans, the oscillating fans, in grow rooms or in their tents, and like they're beating the crap out of their plants. Like the plants are just doing this, and like, oh, it's good for the airflow. It's good for the branches to get thick, but that actually messes up their transpiration, which is them like sweating and breathing. So I do, like, when you look in our grow rooms, like, there's not a lot of movement, and you look at these huge professional grows, there's not a lot of air movement. They have them in the corners, creating a whirlpool. So even in a tent, you can get like a little 4-inch inline fan, in 2 of them. They're very cheap in each corner, and those are fine to put on extension cords. They don't take a lot of power, and you create like a little whirlpool, because people think they need to get direct airflow on the plant. That's usually bad. If you buy a cheap meter, it's like literally 0.5 ms. It's like you won't really see the plants moving too much. The best thing to do is create a whirlpool of air. So put them in the corners of the room, like facing the opposite direction, and it goes like this. So people try to get the oscillating fans and point them at the plants and the tents and this and that, and like it's just hitting them. Like, oh, they like that. I was like, they don't like that. Imagine like plants outside, like cannabis plants getting hit by wind 24/7. Like they don't like it. They get wind burns. So the best thing to do is get the airflow at the top, and just it'll kind of whirlpool down. And if you could kind of do it at the bottom, it's not bad. Like it'll make, depending on your medium, using like fabric pots, it'll grow or dry them out faster, which might not be good. So for a beginner, get 2 little like 4-inch inline fans, little like tin silver ones. They're cheap. And then put like zip tie them in the corners of the tent and just get them going on top. You don't even need to hit the plant. They could even go above the light, just move air around.
It's great stuff. It's great advice. Let's talk about the Evildoer Mold. Your
Mold.
favorite product.
Before we started, her and I were pronouncing, what is it? Anaerobic bacteria wrong. She said, what did you say? Aerobic?
Anaerobic, I think it was.
I think you said aerobic and I said anaerobic, but I think it's anaerobic. We were both wrong. It's like a mixture of what we both said.
Right. We're learning. We're both learning.
Mold
learning.
is like, it's such a hard thing, especially PM. Like through the years, what I've learned is having like a lower VPD at night. So when you look at like a VPD chart, what that means is like if you have 70% humidity and let's say 83 degrees, that should be a number 1 on a VPD chart. I'm trying to go off memory. And my cat's like scratching my vocal booth in here.
Oh no.
Get out of there. Where are you? Are you serious? She's like on the ceiling in my vocal booth. Look at this. Look at all this hydro gear in my studio.
Wow.
Yeah, I got like my plaque sitting on the floor and like all this like grow equipment everywhere. It's like my 2 worlds are always mixing.
2 worlds colliding. That's awesome.
So the best thing to do is have a lower VPD at night, and that's like, it's hard for like, we're talking like for starters. The best thing you do is have decent airflow. Keep your humidity down. Plants transpire at night, so they sweat, and your humidity always spikes at night. So if you want to take it a step up, you get an exhaust fan and another. You can use one Inkbird. There's 2 plugs on it. One's for humidifying, one's for dehumidifying. So if you get one of these things for your tent, you put a little exhaust fan in one of the holes that tents come in, and you set that exhaust, humidity. So when it gets too humid, it'll kick on and blow it out, which is guaranteed to be like almost every night. So that's like the cheapest, most efficient way to like stop mold, is just keep like your humidity low and airflow. Because when you have 2 leaves overlapped when they're like sleeping, they transpire, and the next morning when you come and like lift that leaf, it's like wet underneath. looks like someone like dumped water on the leaf, because when they're overlapping, they're going to like get wet on each other. So you need to like kind of keep your canopy.
Oh wait, we're
keep your airflow going.
Yeah, and you know that's so important. And I think a dawn harvest. Can we? You know, mold is such a horrible thing. But let's move on. We don't want to get stuck. There's so many components. Can you talk about what it means in terms of a dawn harvest a little bit? You know, taking it from the garden to dry and when to harvest.
You said a dawn harvest?
Yeah.
I don't know. I've never heard that term before. Oh, to my opinion, that doesn't matter. Some people would give their plants darkness for 24 hours and be like, oh, like it makes more trichomes, it does this, it does that. But that's all like bro science, as we call it. Like, you know, there's a lot of bro science in gyms. Like, bro, if you take this supplement and do this, like you'll get these results. So there's a lot of bro science in cannabis. And that's never been proved. I've tried everything. People put like ice in their plants and they think it like shocks them and brings out color, but like no one's ever proved that. If you like cool your room down at the end, it will bring out color, but it will it's bad for the plants though. So I try not to do that. There's other ways to get cut the natural potential of your plant out.
Yeah, no, that's great to know. It's good stuff. And then talking about, you know, technology and the use of technology in the grow. I've learned from you how you use it and how important it is. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah. That's why I always recommend these Inkbird things to newcomers, because they're just like for the money you know, it's the best thing you could do for environment controls that are cheap. So I still use them, and I have a multi-million-dollar facility. I still use these little plugs on certain aspects in different places. They're not everywhere, but I still use them on certain things. So those are like invaluable. So if you want to introduce like some technology, you do that, you know. Another subject, I don't know if you have this written down, is like growing medium. So that's like the number one question I get. Like, what should I grow in, like soil, cocoa, or rock wool? I think nowadays there's plenty of like super soils that they say you can go from like start to finish with you can go start to finish with the soil without adding anything. So if there's like a newcomer, I'd recommend using like find a super soil. There's probably plenty of good ones out there now. Just do some research and do that from seed to harvest. So all you do is add water. And the biggest thing with soil with cannabis plants is they need to dry back before the next watering. Like if they're even in hydroponics, like if they're just wet constantly, then it's literally they'll die. They'll get root rot and die. They get no oxygen to the roots. They get anaerobic bacteria.
That's the word of the day.
Yeah, I got it pulled up on my screen right here. So they get that, and it's like, so this was one of my biggest hurdles when I started learning. I never knew when to water. So with soil or something, you stick your finger in. If you pull your finger out and it's like covered in wet soil, it's not ready, and you should pick the pot up. So a few times, what I tell everyone to do is wait till your plant's like wilting, like it's so thirsty it's wilting, and then pick up the pot, get familiar with it, and water it. And an hour later, you'll see it perk back up. So get familiar with that weight of that pot and how the soil looks and everything about it. And then before it gets to that point, you water again. So with soil, you might water, I believe, like this is just what I've done with my own like hobby soil things, is you don't have to water every day. You literally water, you wait 3 days, you water, you wait. Then as it's getting bigger, you might have to water every day. But point being, it's like you need it to dry back before the next watering. So get familiar with that wilt and the weight of that plant and what that looks like. And then that's when you know, like, you're never supposed to pass that point. So don't try to let it get to that point.
That's great.
And there's different, there's different ways too. Like I'm trying this thing out just, for fun. I like to try everything out when it comes to growing. This system, I think, was $800. It's called an air cube. And I'm using it with cocoa, and it's called a flood and drain. So basically, I got like 1 million cats in my garage. All the cats from our facility, the whole colony, I trapped them all and brought them back here.
While you're
So
on that, I'm sorry. Finish your thought because I want to talk about Ramshead.
I'm a cat hoarder clones right here. So this is called an air cube system. These are all house plants, like exotic house plants. So this right here, and the timer waters them. This is a water chiller. You need to keep your water at a certain temperature. So right now my water's at 69 degrees. You want to keep it as low as possible in the mid 60s because that stops bacteria from growing. But this is cocoa right here. So this basically automatically feeds them once a day, right? Wow. So, oh man, I'm seeing spider mites right here. But these are my girl's plants, not mine. So this, I mean, I built the room for her and I hung the lights and I put everything here. So here's an example. These little fans up here, can you see that?
Yes.
So these little fans I put in the corners of the rooms. And what that does is that creates like a kind of like airflow in here. And I have this one on the floor just for the hell of it to push air up. But that pushes like enough air around in here where it's not stagnant. But to get back to this air cube, is this floods and drains them once a day. It'll fill the pots like up to here, and then it'll drain. And I mix the nutrients in the reservoir right here, and it kind of does its own thing. So for a beginner, if you have a little bit of money, this isn't bad. Here's a good example. This plant was in soil right here. This is a Thai constellation. It's kind of a exotic plant. This thing's in soil. It's been in soil. Look at the size of this one compared to this one. So they're the same age, and I put one of these in this air cube system about 2 months ago, and it grew way faster. Like, look at the size of the leaves compared to each other.
Yeah, pretty.
And what you want is you want this variegation right here. So this one has more variegation, bigger leaves. So if you're growing in soil, your plants are going to grow a lot slower. That's just a fact. Hydroponics plants grow faster. So this whole system was $800 just for the watering system, but the plants are like exploding on it basically. So if you want to like take it a step up and you have some money to burn, go hydroponic. The air cube system works good. If you're just learning and if you're learning and what was that?
We love your demonstration. I think it's, I think we appreciate that. So, I think it's, there it is in whole to see it from, a newcomer, to be able to do it yourself.
Yeah, I would, if you have a little bit of money and get a hydroponic, like self-watering system, takes out a lot of the guesswork. You can it'll self-water once a day. You just mix your nutrients in and it'll grow way faster. Like plants grow faster in hydroponics. That's why I like tomato farms and, usually do like hydroponics. They're still like soil tomato farms, but plants just grow slower. Like I've been eating off of this thing almost every day. This is a hydroponic thing. Wow. If this was soil, this would I would have eaten off this once. But because it's hydroponic, I literally cut from it every day and it grows so fast. And here's the reservoir down here. So it's just the fact that hydroponic plants grow faster. So if you want to take it a step up, don't do soil. It's a little more complicated.
But tell us quickly, Ramshead is based in Ramsey, Oklahoma. Tell us, a little bit about, what new products you have coming out in the next month or so and what's going on with Ramshead.
Well, so I deal with the back a lot, the grow side. So we're constantly fixing that. Like I said, we're retrofitting stuff, but it's just like the summer kicked our ass. So now I'm like, we need to build a lean-to and cover our AC compressors. So that's where my mind's at. It's hard for me to sit here and put on a front and lie to people and be like, oh man, we're killing it. We got the best flower ever. We're doing the best. I'm like, no, our shit sucked throughout the summer. I'm embarrassed to even call it mine. But that was everybody out here. So, I'm not going to put on a front and be like, oh, it's the best you can get. It's getting there again, but for a minute it wasn't. So that set us back. But, we are coming out with live resin edibles. Live rosin, sorry. And live rosin is basically chemical-less extracting. So a lot of extracting, you use CO2 and a lot of shit I can't even pronounce and heat and stuff like that. And well, you got to use heat no matter what, but live rosin, you literally use ice and some bubble hash. You use ice to extract like the hash, and then you use a heat press to get like the glue out of it. And then I think you bake it afterwards. There's a whole process to it I'm not 100% familiar with. But it's basically no chemicals. Like sometimes like edibles give me headaches or like hangovers.
Yeah.
There's so many chemicals in it because I pulled, we get stuff tested. I pulled up testing on edibles. I'm like, dude, I don't even know what all these chemicals in here are. This is insane.
I've got
Give me headaches.
a lot of headaches as well.
Yeah, it's crazy. And then especially like black market ones are even worse. But so long story short, is we're doing live rosin edibles. I've never seen someone do it. It's a lot more expensive. So you basically take the plant. As soon as you chop it down, you don't hang it or dry it. You put it in a freezer right away. You cut off the bud, you put it in a freezer. And then whenever you're ready to go do the bubble hash that preserves like the THC and the terpenes and all that, the freezer does. So we're coming out with the live rosin edibles because like I feel like there's a gap in the market for that kind of stuff. Like live rosin, like smoking those pens, eating those edibles is just like the best. Everybody loves it. Like, dude, I have it. This is like reigniting my love for weed. This is amazing because there's just no chemicals in it. Every time you're smoking a pen, it was chemically produced with something. Whether it passes testing or not, there's still chemicals in it. So live rosin is not like that. So I'm sure there's companies out there that do it. There has to be, but I haven't seen any. So people love our live rosin so much because they love our flowers so much. Like, man, we should make edibles. And Richard, my business partner Richard, he was the one like, dude, edibles give me a headache. He's like, I love to eat them and sleep, but they give me headaches and hangovers. And we started doing research, and he's like, dude, it's these chemicals. So we feel like there's a gap in the market, at least in Oklahoma, for that. So we're gonna start making those.
Amazing, I love that. And when do you think we might see those available?
Hopefully the beginning of next year. So we're still catching up. Like I said, the summer kicked our ass. We're doing some retrofitting. So next summer we don't get our asses handed to us again. So that kind of set us back, but we just sent a bunch of plants out we don't do our own processing. That's a whole nother, like, we want to get into it, but like growing's enough. And I sometimes, like, if I don't feel like I'm an expert in something, I don't want to do it. So I'm not going to be like, yeah, I'll process my own, extracts and do it half-assed. I'd rather a professional do it until I'm completely familiar with it. So right now we send it out to someone else and they give us back the live rosin. Sometimes that takes months for them to get it back to us, which it shouldn't. It should take days, in my opinion, but sometimes it takes months for them to get around to it. It's sitting in a freezer, but probably early next year, I would say.
We're going to start to wrap it up, and I think if you could give just, one or two lines for newcomers, what would you say?
Don't have a heavy heart. That's when I first walked into a hydro store 10 years ago, he's my friend now. Now he's a lifelong friend, but he owned the hydro store. First thing he said to me, don't have a heavy heart. And that's what I tell everyone, because you're going to walk in to your room. Your plant might have died that you spent months every day tending to. Your AC broke or something went wrong. You might lose your whole harvest to bud rot or powdery mildew. Just keep on trucking. It's like there's going to be a lot of things that go wrong along the way. And it still happens to me. I've been doing this for so long. I have a huge hiccup or a equipment malfunction, and you're like, shit, man, I've like cut these clones and I've been raising these plants for 3 months and just lost everything. Not only that, you're operating at a loss on my scale. So you got to come out of pocket, but you just have to keep going. Even from a hobby scale, it's like, be willing to lose your plants because it's going to happen.
No, that's great advice. Jorel, thank you for being with us.
Thanks for watching the Rogue Arena podcast. I'm your host, Lulu Cohen. The series is produced by Jamie Roberts. Join us weekly as we dig into the weeds.